12 men, 12 tribes, one divine plan. But before they became the foundation of a nation, they were just brothers, flawed, jealous, ambitious, and struggling for identity. Their rivalries ran deep, their choices carried weight, and their destinies were intertwined in ways they could never have imagined. Through betrayal, redemption, and divine intervention, these 12 sons of Jacob would shape the course of history. But what if their story isn't just about them? What if their journey mirrors our own? What if their struggles hold the key to understanding God's greater plan? The story of Jacob's 12 sons is far more than an ancient family drama. It is a prophetic blueprint, a shadow of things to come. Each brother's life carried a unique lesson, a warning or a blessing that would echo throughout biblical history. From Reuben, who lost his birthright, to Judah, who became the ancestor of kings, and Joseph, whose suffering led to salvation, their lives foreshadowed the destiny of the 12 tribes of Israel, and ultimately, God's redemptive plan for humanity. Their journey teaches us that even in the midst of human failure, divine purpose prevails. By the end of this video, you will see how these ancient stories still speak to us today. Their struggles are our struggles. Their redemption is our redemption. Stay with us to uncover the lessons hidden within their lives and discover how their destinies can inspire us to overcome our own challenges and embrace our God-given purpose. As you dive deeper into this story, don't forget to subscribe to Bible Stories That Grow Your Faith so you don't miss out on more powerful insights into God's divine plan. Also, leave a comment below to let us know which part of this exciting story resonates more with you. Now let's dive deeper. To truly understand the weight of the stories of the 12 sons of Jacob, we must first look at the man who fathered them all, Jacob. His life, his choices, and his relationships set the stage for the 12 sons and the nation they would ultimately build. Let's begin at the very beginning, Jacob's journey and the foundation of the 12 tribes of Israel. Part 1. Jacob's journey and the foundation of the 12 tribes. Jacob's story begins even before his birth. He was born grasping the heel of his twin brother Esau, a moment that foreshadowed the lifelong rivalry between the two brothers. The name Jacob, meaning supplanter or deceiver, prophetically pointed to his character, a man marked by ambition and a relentless pursuit of what he wanted, often at the expense of others. From the very beginning, Jacob's life would be defined by struggles for birthrights, blessings, and identity. As the second-born, Jacob's desire for the rights that belonged to Esau, the birthright and the paternal blessing, led him to acts of deception and manipulation. His mother, Rebekah, supported him in these schemes, leading to one of the most infamous moments in the Bible, the stealing of Esau's blessing. Jacob deceived his father Isaac, who was blind, by disguising himself as Esau and bringing him a meal prepared by his mother. This act of betrayal would forever alter Jacob's relationship with his brother and set in motion a life of exile, struggle, and reconciliation. However, Jacob's deceit did not come without consequences. Upon discovering the trickery, Esau was furious and vowed to kill Jacob. To escape Esau's wrath, Jacob fled, beginning a journey marked by years of uncertainty, conflict, and the need for self-discovery. But despite his flaws and imperfections, God's purpose for Jacob was far from finished. One of the most pivotal moments in Jacob's journey occurred when he fled from Esau and found himself at Bethel. Here, Jacob had a powerful spiritual encounter, a vision of a ladder reaching from earth to heaven, with angels ascending and descending on it. In this moment, God appeared to Jacob, reaffirming the promise he had made to Abraham and Isaac. God assured Jacob that he would be with him, protect him, and eventually bring him back to this land where his descendants would become a great nation. This encounter was not just a moment of spiritual revelation, but a turning point in Jacob's life. It was a divine confirmation that God's promises were still in effect, despite Jacob's actions. It served as a reminder that God's plans are not hindered by human flaws. and his purposes are always moving forward, regardless of personal shortcomings. Jacob in that moment made a vow to the Lord, declaring that if God was with him and kept him safe, he would return to Bethel and worship the God who had promised him such blessings. The next major event in Jacob's life came years later when he was preparing to return home to face Esau. On the banks of the Jabbok River, Jacob found himself alone and desperate. He encountered a mysterious man who wrestled with him throughout the night. When the man touched Jacob's hip, dislocating it, Jacob refused to let go until he received a blessing. In this climactic moment, the man revealed his divine identity and changed Jacob's name to Israel, meaning he struggles with God. This wrestling match was not only a physical struggle, but a symbolic representation of Jacob's ongoing internal struggle. It marked the end of his self-reliance and the beginning of his transformation. From that point on, Jacob's character shifted from a manipulative deceiver to a man who, though still struggling, would rely on God's strength rather than his own. The name change to Israel foreshadowed the struggles the nation of Israel would face. Struggles with identity, with God, and with their destiny. But it also pointed to the eventual victory and fulfillment of God's promises. Jacob's family dynamic was fraught with tension, jealousy, and competition, an environment that would deeply shape the future of the 12 tribes. Jacob's marriages to two sisters, Leah and Rachel, created an atmosphere of rivalry from the outset. Jacob loved Rachel deeply, but he was deceived into marrying her sister Leah first. This caused deep emotional wounds for both sisters, and their relationship played out through the birth of their children. Leah, the unloved wife, bore Jacob 6 sons, and her deep longing for Jacob's affection became evident in her emotional responses. Each son's birth reflected her desire to be loved and accepted, but it was also a reflection of her growing faith and trust in God. After each birth, she offered praises to God, acknowledging his hand in her life. Her sons Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun became foundational to the 12 tribes of Israel, and despite her personal pain, Leah's contributions were essential to God's plan. Rachel, the favored wife, faced her own struggles with infertility, which led her to give her maidservant Bilhah to Jacob in an attempt to bear children through her. Eventually, Rachel gave birth to Joseph, the child she had longed for, and she poured all her maternal affection into him. This favoritism would later sow the seeds of conflict within the family as Joseph became the object of Jacob's special love, igniting the jealousy of his brothers. Additionally, Leah's maidservant Zilpah was also given to Jacob as a concubine, and she bore Jacob 2 sons. These complex family dynamics, marked by favoritism, rivalry, and unfulfilled desires, would play out through the lives of Jacob's sons and lay the foundation for the nation of Israel. The tensions between Rachel and Leah, the sons of the maidservants, and the battle for Jacob's affection would echo through generations, creating a legacy of struggle, reconciliation, and divine purpose. The drama of Jacob's family life was more than personal conflict. It was a prophetic foreshadowing of the struggles that Israel as a nation would face. The jealousy, rivalry, and power struggles between Jacob's sons mirrored the divisions, rebellions, and eventual reconciliations that Israel would experience as a people. Just as Jacob's sons would face difficulties, Israel would also wrestle with its identity and its relationship with God, but there would always be hope for redemption, just as there was for Jacob and his sons. Despite Jacob's many flaws, his deceit, his favoritism, and his manipulations, God's plan for the nation of Israel could not be thwarted. Even in the midst of Jacob's imperfect family dynamic, God's providence prevailed. The 12 sons, each with their unique flaws, would go on to form the 12 tribes of Israel, and through them, God's promises to Abraham would be fulfilled. God works through human imperfection to bring about his perfect will. This foundational period in Jacob's life sets the stage for the unfolding of the 12 tribes of Israel. As we move forward into the stories of Jacob's sons, we see that each journey, each life, is not only a part of individual transformation, but also part of God's grand design for Israel. a design that will ultimately lead to the fulfillment of his promises to the world. Part 2. The Sons of Leah. Strength, struggle, and lost potential. Reuben, the firstborn who lost his birthright. Reuben, the firstborn son of Jacob and Leah, began life with tremendous potential. As the eldest, he was born into a position of privilege, holding the birthright, an inheritance that bestowed leadership and responsibility over the family. This birthright, however, was more than just a familial title. It represented authority, power, and a unique blessing that would have ensured Reuben's role as the future head of the house. But Reuben's impulsive actions would cost him everything. In a moment of grave error, Reuben slept with Bilhah, his father's concubine, a decision that was not only morally disastrous but socially and culturally devastating. This act of betrayal was seen as an attempt to undermine Jacob's authority and disrupt the family's delicate balance. In Jewish tradition, it was regarded as a severe offense that threatened the patriarchal order of the family. Reuben's sin, then, was not just a personal failing but a violation of a sacred familial structure. By disrespecting his father's authority in such a blatant way, Reuben sealed his fate. Jacob, deeply hurt by Reuben's actions, publicly rebuked him. When it came time to bless his sons, Jacob passed over Reuben, the natural heir, and instead pronounced a blessing on Judah. Genesis 49, verse 3-4. Reuben's loss was profound, not just of the birthright but of his standing as the family's leader. Though his descendants would become one of the 12 tribes of Israel, the tribe of Reuben would fade into insignificance in the generations that followed. Reuben's story is a stark reminder that even the greatest potential can be lost in a moment of reckless decision-making. His life illustrates the immense impact of choices and how a single misstep can alter the course of one's future in ways that are irreversible. Have you ever lost a great opportunity due to one impulsive decision? Reuben's story reminds us that the consequences of our actions are far-reaching, and sometimes we may not fully comprehend the weight of a momentary lapse in judgment. Simeon and Levi, the brothers of wrath. Simeon and Levi, the second and third sons of Jacob and Leah, were driven by a powerful sense of justice. But this zeal for right was often overshadowed by their anger and desire for vengeance. Their most infamous moment came when their sister Dinah was violated by Shechem, a prince of the city of Hamor. In an act of rage, Simeon and Levi plotted revenge. They deceived Shechem and his people by pretending to agree to a peace treaty on the condition that they undergo circumcision. While the men of the city were recovering, Simeon and Levi attacked, killing every male and plundering the city. Genesis 34, verse 25-29. While their anger was rooted in a desire for justice, their response was both disproportionate and destructive. Their actions reflected a deep flaw, their inability to temper passion with wisdom. Though their act of vengeance may have been perceived as righteous in their eyes, it disrupted the peace and unity of their family. Jacob, their father, rebuked them, fearing that their violent actions would bring dishonor to the family and provoke neighboring nations to attack them. The consequences of their violent revenge would be felt for generations. Simeon's tribe would eventually be scattered across Israel, and Levi's tribe, though destined for priesthood, would not receive land like the other tribes. Instead, Levi's descendants were set apart to serve in the sanctuary, becoming priests and caretakers of God's house. But they would have no political power or territory. The story of Simeon and Levi teaches a profound lesson on the dangers of unchecked emotions. Their passion for justice, though noble in intent, became a destructive force when it was not restrained by wisdom and self-control. Their inability to recognize the broader consequences of their actions fractured the unity of their family and their place in God's plan. What happens when passion turns to destruction? Simeon and Levi's story serves as a warning about the perils of unchecked emotions. When our actions are driven by unrestrained anger, we risk tearing apart the very things we hold dear. Judah, the flawed leader who became the tribe of kings. In stark contrast to Reuben, Simeon, and Levi, Judah's journey was one of profound transformation. Though he, too, made mistakes, his story is a powerful testimony of redemption and growth. Early in his life, Judah was far from a picture of righteousness. He was involved in the betrayal of Joseph, and later in an act of deception involving his daughter-in-law Tamar, Genesis 38. However, it was through these early failings that Judah would come to understand the deep necessity of humility, selflessness, and responsibility. Judah's greatest moment of transformation occurred during the family's second journey to Egypt, when the brothers had to confront the unknown ruler of Egypt, who, unbeknownst to them, was their long-lost brother Joseph. When Benjamin, Judah's youngest brother, was accused of theft, Judah stepped forward and offered himself as a surety for Benjamin. He promised to bear any punishment in place of his brother, Genesis 44, verse 18 to 34. This self-sacrificial act of love was a stark contrast to Judah's earlier actions, and marked a turning point in his character. His willingness to put himself in harm's way for the sake of his family demonstrated a maturity and sense of responsibility that had been absent in his youth. Judah's transformation did not go unnoticed by God. Jacob, in his blessing to his sons, declared that the scepter would never depart from Judah, signaling that his descendants would lead Israel. Judah's line would eventually produce Israel's greatest king, David, and ultimately the Messiah, Jesus Christ. Judah's story became a profound example of how redemption can bring about a legacy of greatness. His tribe would go on to lead Israel, and his descendants would forever be known as the royal line. Judah's life proves that your past does not define your future. Redemption is always possible. No matter how flawed you are, God can transform your story into one of purpose and legacy. Judah, the leader who failed, would later become the ancestor of kings. Your story is not over. The sons of Leah, a legacy of strength, struggle, and redemption. The stories of Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah are a study in contrasts. Reuben's lost birthright serves as a cautionary tale of how a moment of impulsiveness can derail a life of potential. Simeon and Levi's rage, though rooted in righteous anger, becomes a lesson in how unchecked emotions can destroy not only individual futures, but the unity of a family. Judah, in his flaws, emerges as a model of transformation, illustrating that even the most flawed individuals can be redeemed and used for great purposes. As we reflect on these stories, we are reminded of the power of choices, both good and bad, and the ways in which our actions shape our legacy. But the story doesn't end here. The next chapter will turn to the sons of Rachel, whose destinies were shaped by both divine favor and family betrayal. In the lives of Joseph and Benjamin, we will see the power of redemption and the unfolding of God's plan for the 12 tribes of Israel. Part 3. The Sons of Rachel, Favor, Betrayal, and Divine Purpose. Joseph, the dreamer-turned-deliverer. Joseph's story stands as one of the most profound and powerful narratives in Scripture. As the firstborn son of Rachel, Jacob's beloved wife, Joseph was favored from birth. His father gave him a richly ornamented coat, a symbol of his special status among the sons, Genesis 37:3. But it was Joseph's dreams that marked him for a life of extraordinary trials and destiny. In these dreams, Joseph saw himself in a position of authority, with his family bowing before him. Dreams that foreshadow a future where Joseph would rise above his brothers to save them from famine and disaster. Genesis 37, verse 5 to 11. However, the dreams, while prophetic, sowed the seeds of envy and animosity among his brothers. They couldn't stand the thought of Joseph's elevated status, especially when they already felt the sting of Jacob's favoritism. What followed was a shocking act of betrayal. His brothers plotted to kill him, but at the last moment they decided to sell him into slavery, handing him over to a caravan of Ishmaelites bound for Egypt, Genesis 37, verse 23 to 28. Joseph's life, once filled with promise, now seemed to be crushed under the weight of betrayal, suffering, and uncertainty. Alone, far from home, and enslaved in a foreign land, his dreams appeared to be nothing more than the fantasies of a naive young man. Yet, through all the hardship, God's hand never left Joseph. His story is a testament to God's unchanging faithfulness. even when circumstances seem bleak. From the pit of betrayal to the house of Potiphar, Joseph was tested, and time and again he remained faithful. When falsely accused of assault by Potiphar's wife and thrown into prison, Joseph remained steadfast in his trust that God had a plan for his life. Joseph's rise to prominence in Egypt began when he interpreted Pharaoh's dreams, revealing a coming famine. With this divine insight, Joseph was appointed to oversee Egypt's preparations and became the second most powerful man in the kingdom. Genesis 41, verse 46 to 57. His ability to interpret dreams, a gift he had received from God, became the means of not only Egypt's salvation, but also his own family's redemption. The same brothers who had betrayed him came to Egypt for food, unaware that the brother they had wronged had become the very one who would save them. Joseph's life is often seen as a type of Christ, someone who was rejected, suffered unjustly, and was ultimately exalted to a place of power, only to save those who had wronged him. Much like Christ, Joseph's rejection by his brothers and his subsequent suffering paved the way for redemption, not just for himself, but for an entire nation and his own family. This foreshadows Christ's work on the cross. Betrayed by Judas, crucified, yet raised to life to offer salvation to all. Joseph's journey is a powerful reminder that God can turn our deepest wounds into the pathway to his purposes. He shows us that suffering is not the end of the story, but a step in God's greater plan. No matter the circumstances, God's promises remain unshaken, and sometimes our greatest pain is the preparation for our greatest purpose. Would you forgive those who destroyed your life? Joseph's story teaches us about purpose beyond pain, showing us that even the most difficult experiences can be used by God for something greater than we could ever imagine. Benjamin, the quiet but significant son. Benjamin, the youngest of Jacob's sons and the second child born to Rachel, is often overshadowed by his older brother Joseph, whose dramatic rise and fall takes center stage. Benjamin's birth, however, marks a significant turning point in the story. Rachel, the love of Jacob's life, died during childbirth, giving her son the name Benjamin, meaning son of the right hand, Genesis 35, verse 16 to 18. His birth represents a bittersweet moment of grief for Jacob. He gains a son, but loses the woman he loved. Benjamin's life, unlike Joseph's, is quieter, more subtle, yet no less significant. Though he remains largely in the background in the early part of the narrative, his role becomes crucial when Joseph tests his brothers years later. Benjamin is the youngest of Jacob's sons, and when Joseph orchestrates a series of tests to determine whether his brothers have truly repented for their earlier betrayal, it is Benjamin who becomes a key figure in their ultimate reconciliation. Genesis 42, verses 55. Joseph's decision to keep Benjamin as a slave in Egypt after accusing him of theft is the test that forces Judah to step forward, showing his willingness to sacrifice himself for Benjamin's freedom, a moment that leads to the reunion and forgiveness of the family. Benjamin's tribe would later play a crucial role in Israel's history. Jacob's prophetic blessing over Benjamin in Genesis 49:27 describes him as a ravenous wolf, a fierce and valiant warrior. Indeed, the tribe of Benjamin produced some of the most skilled warriors in Israel's history. Even more remarkable is that Benjamin's lineage would give rise to Israel's first king, Saul, and later to Paul, the apostle to the Gentiles, whose influence on the early Christian church changed the world forever. While Benjamin may have been quiet and reserved, his significance cannot be overlooked. His role in the family drama and his tribe's future legacy shows that sometimes those who seem least noticed carry the greatest weight in God's plan. His descendants would impact the nation of Israel in ways that would forever shape the course of history. Sometimes those in the background play the most crucial roles. Like Benjamin, our significance is not always defined by how loudly we speak, but by the quiet impact we have on those around us and the legacy we leave. The stories of Joseph and Benjamin reveal how God works through favor and betrayal, using even the most unlikely individuals to fulfill His divine purposes. Their lives show us that God's plans often unfold through unexpected paths. Next, we turn to the sons of the maidservants, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher, whose lives may seem less prominent, but whose destinies were equally significant in shaping the future of Israel. Part 4. The Sons of the Maidservants. In this segment, we delve into the lives and legacies of the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, Bilhah being Rachel's maidservant and Zilpah being Leah's maidservant. These two women gave birth to 4 of Jacob's sons, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher, whose roles in the history of Israel, though sometimes overshadowed, were pivotal in shaping the destiny of the nation. Their stories are rich with lessons of justice, freedom, resilience, provision, wisdom, and balance, providing profound insights that are still relevant to us today. Dan and Naphtali, symbols of justice and freedom. Dan and Naphtali, the sons of Bilhah, embody contrasting aspects of Israel's spiritual journey. Their stories highlight the tension between the pursuit of justice and freedom and the consequences of deviating from God's commands. Dan's tribe, though initially blessed with a portion of land in the Promised Land, faced a troubling future. They struggled to fully possess their territory, Judges 1:34, and over time became known for their involvement in idolatry. The tribe's shift away from following God's commandments resulted in their eventual downfall, as their influence became tainted by false worship. One of the most troubling moments regarding Dan is their infamous association with idolatry, especially seen in the incident of Micah's idol, Judges 18. This not only led to the corruption of the tribe, but also their exclusion from the list of tribes in Revelation 7, verse 5-8. Dan's downfall serves as a profound warning. It raises a pressing question: can success turn into a downfall? Dan's tribe had enormous potential. They were positioned in an area of strategic importance, and with a commitment to God, their legacy could have been one of great strength. However, by choosing idols over the true God, they forfeited their place in God's plan. In our own lives, when we let idols, whether in the form of career, wealth, or status, replace God, we risk the same tragic fate. The story of Dan underscores the peril of placing anything or anyone above God in our lives. When success turns into an idol, we must remember that it can quickly spiral into a downfall if we lose sight of our true source of strength and purpose. Naphtali, in contrast, is remembered for his poetic and warrior spirit. Jacob's blessing over Naphtali, Genesis 49:21, describes him as a doe set free that bears beautiful fawns, a poetic image of grace and agility. This blessing speaks of Naphtali's tribe as a people who combined strength with beauty. They were warriors, but also a people with a deep sense of freedom and creativity. Naphtali's tribe was instrumental in the deliverance of Israel during times of oppression. Under the leadership of Deborah and Barak, Naphtali's warriors fought bravely against the Canaanites, Judges 4 verse 6-10, playing a decisive role in Israel's victory. The tribe's legacy was one of fighting for justice and freedom, both in a physical and spiritual sense. Naphtali's story teaches us that true strength comes from a combination of grace and courage. Freedom is not just about liberty from oppression, but also the courage to stand for righteousness in the face of evil. Just as Naphtali was both graceful and strong, we too are called to fight for justice in a world that too often embraces injustice. His tribe's legacy challenges us to consider how we can use our gifts, both artistic and practical, to fight for a better world. Gad and Asher, the warriors and providers. Gad and Asher, the sons of Zilpah, illustrate a different facet of strength, resilience, and provision. Each tribe's blessing reveals the unique role they played in Israel's broader story, showing how God used different strengths to build His kingdom. Gad, the first son of Zilpah, was blessed with the role of a fierce warrior. Jacob's blessing, Genesis 49, verse 19, portrays Gad as a troop or raiding party, a symbol of the tribe's martial prowess. Throughout Israel's history, Gad's descendants played a crucial role in defending the nation, particularly along Israel's eastern border. The tribe was known for its courage and its readiness to fight in battle. They were often the first to go into combat, and their strategic positioning east of the Jordan River placed them in a crucial position to protect Israel from external threats. Numbers 32:1-5. Gad's warriors were not just brave in battle, they were also resilient. The tribe's ability to stand firm in difficult circumstances speaks to the strength of character that rises in the face of adversity. Gad's legacy is a powerful reminder that challenges often reveal our deepest strength, and when we face struggles in our own lives, we too can rise to the occasion as warriors for God's kingdom. Asher, also the son of Zilpah, received a different kind of blessing. Jacob's prophecy, Genesis 49:20, speaks of Asher's descendants enjoying abundant food, blessed with fertile land that would yield luxurious provisions. Asher's tribe became known for its prosperity, especially in agriculture. The tribe's lands were fertile and they provided an abundance of resources for Israel. In contrast to Gad's warrior spirit, Asher's blessing emphasized the importance of provision and peace. Asher's legacy teaches us the importance of balance in God's kingdom. Not everyone is called to battle. Some are called to provide the resources necessary to sustain the nation. Asher's prosperity was not just for personal gain, but was meant to bless others. This reflects the principle that God blesses us not merely for our own enjoyment, but for the benefit of others as well. It's a reminder that prosperity must be stewarded wisely and shared generously. A tribe of fierce warriors standing against all odds, what can we learn from their resilience? A tribe of abundance providing nourishment and peace. How can we cultivate peace and provision in our own lives? Issachar and Zebulun, the balance of stability and exploration. Issachar and Zebulun represent the balance between stability and exploration, between those who are called to be steady, practical workers and those called to go beyond borders to expand influence. Issachar's tribe was one of hard work and wisdom. Jacob's blessing, Genesis 49:14, describes Issachar as a strong donkey resting between the sheepfolds, an image that speaks to the tribe's laborious nature and stability. Issachar was known for their agricultural skills and their contributions to Israel's military efforts. But what set Issachar apart was their wisdom. The men of Issachar were noted for their understanding of the times, knowing what Israel ought to do, 1 Chronicles 12:32. They blended intellectual understanding with practical labor, providing the guidance necessary for Israel to thrive. Issachar's legacy shows us the importance of balancing hard work with wisdom. In our own lives, we are called to work diligently, but also to seek understanding and direction from God. Wisdom is not merely theoretical, it must be applied in the everyday tasks of life. Zebulun, Issachar's brother, received a blessing of trade and exploration, Genesis 49:13. The tribe of Zebulun became known for its maritime trade and its efforts to extend Israel's influence beyond its borders. While Issachar labored to build a stable foundation, Zebulun's descendants sought new opportunities, exploring distant lands and establishing connections with foreign nations. This partnership between Issachar and Zebulun reflects the power of balance between the stability of wisdom and the boldness of exploration. Zebulun's legacy teaches us that it's not enough to stay within our comfort zones. To fulfill God's calling, we must be willing to venture into new areas, explore new opportunities, and expand our influence for His kingdom. In doing so, we combine the wisdom of Issachar with the courage of Zebulun. Are you a thinker or a doer? Their partnership shows the power of balance. Some of us are thinkers and some of us are doers, but both roles are essential in fulfilling God's purpose. The story of Issachar and Zebulun challenges us to seek a balance between wisdom and action, stability and exploration. We are called to work diligently in the world while also seeking to expand our influence for God's glory. The legacies of Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, and Zebulun illustrate the diverse ways in which God uses his people to fulfill his plan. Each tribe offers us unique lessons on the importance of balance in our lives, between strength and grace, justice and freedom, work and worship. The lives of these sons remind us that even those who seem less prominent in the grand narrative have an essential role to play in God's kingdom. As we reflect on their stories, we are invited to examine our own lives. Are we living with integrity, balancing wisdom and action, resilience and provision? These tribes challenge us to live in such a way that our strengths are used not just for our own benefit, but for the good of others and the glory of God. As we conclude our exploration of the 12 tribes of Israel, we reflect on the profound lessons that their stories offer us today. These tribes, each with their unique strengths and weaknesses, provide a vivid picture of how God works through imperfect people to fulfill his perfect plan. From the birth of these tribes in the house of Jacob, we see that God's purposes are not hindered by human flaws. He uses even the most unlikely individuals and circumstances to bring about his will. Reuben, the firstborn, had the birthright and the promise of leadership. Yet his failure to act decisively in critical moments cost him the blessing that was rightfully his. His story is a warning of the dangers of wasted potential, of how our actions or inactions can have long-term consequences. Simeon and Levi's impulsive actions in avenging the dishonor of their sister Dinah, Genesis 34, revealed the destructive power of unchecked emotions. Their violent response not only led to personal and familial conflict, but also caused lasting consequences for their descendants. Their story teaches us the importance of self-control and the need to submit our emotions to God's guidance. Judah's story is one of transformation. Despite his earlier failures, including his role in selling Joseph into slavery, Judah's eventual leadership in Israel and his role in the redemption of his brother Benjamin show us the power of repentance and God's ability to turn a person's life around. Judah's story is a powerful testament to God's grace and the possibility of redemption. Joseph's life is one of the most inspiring narratives of God's sovereignty at work. Despite being betrayed by his brothers and enduring years of suffering in Egypt, Joseph's faith and perseverance led him to a position where he could save his family and an entire nation. His story reminds us that God is always at work, even in our darkest moments, and he has the power to turn our suffering into purpose. While the tribes of Reuben, Simeon, and Judah often receive more attention in Scripture, the lesser-known sons such as Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, and others also played essential roles in God's unfolding plan. Their stories remind us that no one is insignificant in God's eyes. Whether in the spotlight or behind the scenes, each person has a unique purpose in God's greater narrative. God uses imperfect people to fulfill his perfect plan. What's your role in his story? The 12 tribes of Israel are a testament to the fact that God does not rely on perfect individuals to accomplish his purposes. Each tribe, with its strengths and weaknesses, contributes to the fulfillment of God's promises. Just as God worked through the diverse personalities and situations of these tribes, he is also working through you and me, using our unique gifts, experiences, and even our flaws to fulfill his perfect plan. So the question remains, what's your role in his story? Whether you are in a time of prosperity or struggle, whether you feel seen or hidden, know that you have a place in God's grand narrative. Embrace your purpose with faith and confidence, knowing that he can use every part of you for his glory. As we close, I encourage you to take a deeper dive into the prophetic roles of these tribes. Each tribe has a unique contribution to the spiritual and physical history of Israel, and understanding their destinies can give us valuable insights into our own. The themes of redemption, purpose, and divine sovereignty that run through these stories are not just ancient lessons, they are alive today, speaking to us personally. If this message resonates with you, I invite you to engage further with this study. Explore the prophecies associated with each tribe in Scripture and reflect on their individual legacies. Consider how you too can play your part in God's ongoing story. Remember, your journey is a part of a much larger narrative, divinely orchestrated for His glory and your ultimate good. If you've been moved by these stories, don't forget to subscribe to Bible Stories That Grow Your Faith. For more engaging stories, share this video with someone who could benefit, and comment below with your thoughts or questions. Let's continue this conversation and dive even deeper into how these ancient truths still speak to us today. Your thoughts matter, and your journey is important. Let's walk it together.